This video is brought to you by my wonderful Patreon team. If you want to join the Patreon team, please feel free to click the link down below, and if not, please just enjoy the video. Megalophobia, the fear of large and giant objects and landscapes. A phobia that I personally have no connection with, for once. It's an interesting fear for sure, because many people suffer from this phobia but may not even know it. Have you ever looked at a large building and felt its seemingly impossible size stare back at you? Have you ever seen a huge mountain or cliffside and felt dizzy and anxious from looking up at it? Then I've got some bad news for you. You may suffer from megalophobia. But megalophobia isn't just about cliffs and buildings, it's also about just giant creatures. And we've had an interest and love of overcoming creatures and giants throughout history within the stories that we're told growing up. From sailing the oceans in Moby Dick, or even the story of David and Goliath, and of course you can't forget everything that's wrong with Lovecraft's universe of making us feel so small. And as time has gone on, we have seen many films with beasts battling each other within our cities, or even the legacy of King Kong and Godzilla. We love seeing this stuff, and it's something that we're just drawn to, and it's great to see humans surviving the impossible when it seems like all odds are against them. Now I just want to be honest, I had a hard time writing about this. It was just difficult to break it apart, as I have no true personal connection of how this fear could make you feel scared. I don't find it scary to think of the idea of dinosaurs once lurking on this earth, or even structures that are too big for me to even handle, but instead I find that idea inspiring. I see them as a challenge for us as the human race. So let's go get our swords and shields out and go slay ourselves some giants. The Alps' freezing and betraying landscapes, the dark endless depths of the world's massive oceans, and of course the impossible structures that we have somehow crafted throughout history. And maybe the scariest of them all is that giant universe that surrounds us at every single moment. And of course, because of that, it's impossible not to feel small every once in a while. And that's okay. I personally find it great that we live in such a wide universe. There's so much space for the natural world to just do what it does best, and that's just being magical, terrifying, but beautiful. We have captured the sublime throughout history, seeing the inspiring awe and fear that the world can create for us. I remember a few years back, me, my sister and our dad got caught in a massive storm, and being on a seaside town of Whitby, we were able to park our car close to a cliffside and just watch the storm battle at sea. And I don't know if you've ever watched a storm by the ocean, but it is both wonderful and scary at once. Being able to have a chance and see the lightning extrude across the darkened clouds and against the violent waves, but also knowing that whatever I did or whatever I chose to do would have no effect on these elements at play. And that thought alone scared me, made me feel small, and of course I still think about it to this day, and I've never felt so terrified. Chasing that storm and watching it was inspiring for me. I also found myself being fascinated by storms throughout the years, and I could film them whenever I could. But there are many more out there that dare to chase storms more than just to watch them, but instead to chase storms and conquer that big next rush that they've been looking for. And of course the same goes to those who suffer from submechaphobia, and looking at an eerie empty crashed ship under the ocean, including myself, we would have a panic attack and immediately turn away from the image. But for the likes of James Cameron, for example, there is history there and a story to be uncovered, and therefore there is an achievement for him to discover for himself. Just like history has taught us, just like art has taught us, we as humans push to defeat the challenge of the gigantic, the colossal, and well, the sublime. But unfortunately for many of us, we can't be these real life action heroes, and we find the comfort in our own home of just playing a video game, creating our own adventures through them. But many phobias, as we've learned from these videos, can be created within gaming and sometimes can be the full focus point of the horror. But Megalophobia has a different type of focus, I find. We often see the end of our journeys coming to these huge climatic fights against these incredibly huge animals and monsters, but instead of horror and fear, they can be growth and a mental and physical moment for our character to truly become heroes. But have I ever had a moment in a game for me where a size of an enemy or a creature gives me a strong feeling of dread? Most definitely. Do I think it's Megalophobia? I don't think so. The first time I ever encountered this feeling was of course when I saw the giant squid from Wind Waker. Ah, there he is again. I screamed, paused the game, and of course if you know me, I ran in terror. I couldn't believe that I was going through a peaceful sail, going full throttle on my adventure, and then for it to be interrupted by this thing. It was too much for me to handle, plus the thalassophobia thing. Not good. And of course you can't forget, just play the clip. And if I just gotta be honest with you, the truth of the matter is, when I see normal sized people defeating enemies that are 20 times bigger than them, it's just awesome. Kratos has been ripping off the fingernails of gods and talking to sea serpents for years, and I truly love to see it, but anyone with this phobia, I can imagine this must just be pure terror. And I understand that, the colossal size of something could truly strike terror into a player if it's done correctly. And I suppose while we're on the subject of Colossus, as you search the beautiful worlds of Shadow of the Colossus, you are always in constant awe of its wonderful landscapes around you. Every structure, cliffside and open vista, it constantly makes you wonder why this place was built, who built it, why is it empty, who was it keeping out or what was it keeping in. Enter the 16 Colossi. Shadow of the Colossus, that one guy from X-Men, Colossus, he's cool, that live and protect this land, I believe. There is so much to be said about this game, but for the purpose of the video, of course, we're just going to keep to the stars of the show. Armed with a sword, a bow and arrow, and of course Aggro, your trusty horse, Wanda must outsmart, lure, and scale these massive monstrous colossi that have their own attributes, sizes, and even speed. Some can even fly while others lurk beneath the sands. But if there was one that encapsulates the meaning of Megalophobia, for me personally, I think it's the third Colossus, Gaius. As you make your way up to the platform, you see the fog hiding what appears to be some sort of fallen structure. And this is unnerving enough. Seeing this small platform and this structure laying still, it can only make you wonder what would happen next. And then all of a sudden that structure that was laying on the floor begins to stand, and right away you realise what sort of battle you're truly in for. As you run around the platform with very little room to breathe, waiting for your time to attack, you find yourself often being frightened or even in awe at the size of this huge Colossus. But what makes this fight so fantastic? As you try and make attacks with your tiny trusty blade, you don't seem to be making a dent, and no matter what you do, your attacks won't do anything to this giant Colossus, or any Colossus in fact. And for you to be able to do any real damage to these Colossus, you must be able to mount them and truly stand on the shoulder of giants. You must lure Gaius to use its own weapon to be able to scale this said Colossus. And at this point you realise how small you really are to this thing. The fact that you're not only mounting him to climb up him, but instead you're jumping on what he uses as a simple tool, or at least what's an extension of himself, but at the same time it also shows Wanda's pure determination to complete his quest. And if this person is willing to climb and anger these giant beasts to do whatever he is fighting for, or whoever this girl is, it must be pretty important to him. And if he is willing to sacrifice his life for this cause, and if history has shown us anything, that's surely pretty heroic, right? So many created gaming worlds and beautifully rendered landscapes and cities have shown us what it's like to truly live within these worlds. From Half-Life Citadel disappearing into the clouds hiding its sinister structure, or even playing Death Stranding, having the eye of the snowy mountain watching over you, only daring the player with his progress and daring them to push their delivery skills and survival skills to the limits. Or even just the entirety of what Breath of the Wild was, questioning the player and asking the player to climb every single cliff and even defeat all the divine beasts and even climb the castle walls. We aspire to reach these limitless heights in games, and if there's any game that's made a living off this, of course it would be the Assassin's Creed franchise. Assassin's Creed has literally made its bread and butter from the freedom of parkour. Scaling these towers and climbing to the top of them, looking down at the cities around you, knowing that there isn't a roof that you're not able to conquer and climb on. As the series grew into its own, buildings and locations only got bigger, and honestly for me, I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the pinnacle for the franchise when it came to climbing environments and giant man-made structures looming over the player. As you make your way across the beautiful setting of Greece, you are constantly watched by the gods. And I mean literally. These are huge monolithic statues of gods across the world, and each one towering over the player, the trees and of course even the mountains. When playing this for footage, I did discover this sense of fear or dread whenever I got up to them. It's not because of their structure, but instead the idea of them just getting up and starting to move. But there's stories behind these characters and gods and legends that are told to us, and that alone makes them feel way more alive and fleshed out. The main character even adds to this when he's addressing them whenever you approach, only aiding in that sense of power that is connected to these statues of gods that watch over this world.
Artemis of the wild land, mistress of animals.
And that's what we would love to be, a legend, a hero within these games, and especially fantasy games. For many, that's the sole reason why we play them, to put our own adventures and stories to come to life in front of us on the screen and become the hero to save the world from impending doom. The Elder Scrolls series is fantastic at this, and every time I see the end of a main quest, I feel like I've been a part of something special. Even when I played Oblivion and saw Mehrunes Dagon just walk across this huge world that I've been so encapsulated by, but he just walks and smashes through buildings like it was nothing, it was scary to see. But then when him and Akatosh has that final huge battle, it felt pretty life changing at the time for my 11-year-old self. I am such a nerd. Jesus Christ. The worlds of the Elder Scrolls growing up for me was always pretty intimidating, but now that the open world genre has become the norm, maybe the next games in the series won't feel the same, and I think that kinda upsets me. I generally find it hard still not to feel so tiny in a world like Skyrim's. As you look around these wonderful and picturesque environments, you feel a sense of scale around you. There's a reason why the throat of the world stands dead in the middle of Skyrim's map, and it acts as Skyrim's introduction to the scale of said universe. No matter where you stand in this map, that gigantic mountain will be calling for the player, both literally and of course mentally. And of course this moment in the game is just so monumental. To take these 7,000 steps is the beginning of the Dovahkiing's adventure, and you know you're a part of something way bigger than yourself. As you make your way up these steps, you must fight different beasts along the way, bears, trolls, and even to my surprise, because Skyrim seemed to be pretty nice to me on the day of recording this, even a dragon came along to challenge me. The steps and climbing up this mountain felt like one of the most iconic moments I can remember going through when playing Skyrim for the first time. We're in full control of when we're willing to face this challenge, and we're in full control when we're willing to stand on top of that mountain and take a look at this massive world around us that we're expected to save. How awesome is that? Being able to have something so huge that towers over us, but the fact that we're able to defeat it, conquer it, just as human beings, I find it inspiring. If you have this fear, if you have megalophobia, I'm sorry. It must be tough to feel so small in a universe that only seems to be getting bigger. But I want you to know that you're all amazing and you're inspiring. I know for some that it's just a game and people may not understand why you have this phobia, but for many who suffer from this fear, defeating the gaping dragon from Dark Souls, for example, takes more than just being good at the game. It takes real courage to face your fears head on. And the way I see it, there is nothing more sublime than that. Hi, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a really fun time making this one. It was fun to just go back and play a ton of games. I had so much fun jumping back into Skyrim, and for some reason it just wanted to be super picturesque and help me with my recording. So hey Skyrim, I appreciate you on not being broken for once. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know down below, and if you have any ideas for more phobias for me to cover, I would love to know, because I'd like to look into a little bit more interesting and even niche phobias that not many people may experience. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this, there's a playlist filled with all the other phobias, and even subscribe for more videos and essays like this every single week. And of course, I will see you at the next checkpoints. Goodbye.